Welcome to this How to Make a Trench Board tutorial. This will be as much a project log as a tutorial, and I may overdub some of it just to point out things to avoid, mistakes I may have made, or mistakes I almost made. It will be broken up into a few sections because it's pretty long, and I will try and make them make sense as best I can. I did this over about a month is how long it took. I did it for one of the miniwargaming.com terrain monthly build-offs, and I will start out with the planning and the materials and getting started, and then break it up after there. So without further ado, let's get on to the planning. Okay, I know it's unusual. Usually I just go for it and I don't have a plan, but I really wanted a plan this time because I had a few things that I needed to do for this. I wanted it to be flat, so everything would be dug in. I wanted to be able to stack onto a shelf without much difficulty. So the other thing is I wanted it to be modular, so I made sure that everything was in the center line of my 2x2 boards. That way I could put it in multiple configurations. The other thing is I knew I wanted to have a trench underneath the ground, and then have cutout areas for artillery or storage or whatever you wanted that would give good line of sight despite it being built up, down instead of up, with a door that went into the trenches. And I knew I wanted a bunker over here, and then I wanted some circular areas that I could use as like elevators, a way to get on the field for if you wanted to do as some of your house rules. That's how you entered from reserves. Gives you some options, and then some craters. But I took a piece of graph paper and I drew in exactly what I wanted, and then I had my legend at the bottom with some notes for things to remember. If you want a copy of these, just let me know, and I'll shoot you an email, or just feel free to scan this and use it. It's fine. Then I had to think about depth and height, and I knew I wanted model 1 inch to 2 inches would be high, and I measured out how big, and my plan was to make it wide enough for a Terminator size base, but not anything bigger, and mostly, and in some places the Terminators couldn't get through, so I wanted to make it so that really it was just infantry running around in these trenches. So one tip that I'll do right off is when you're planning this, make sure you plan exactly the size and think about what size models you want to come through. The other thing is you want to think about, I'm just putting bridges on top to get across things, but if you wanted to put in some breaks, you would want to do that at this stage and think about that. And then my bunker, I knew at this point I wanted to have a bunker, but I wanted it to be removable, so I could actually put in a piece that would be flat like ground too if I didn't want to play with the bunker. Alright, so moving on to the side cutouts. So here's the side view, and basically my 3 layers of foam would be right here. This would be a 1/2 inch layer, and then I looked at the tunnel sides, and down here is with layer 1 and 2 cut away, so that'd be the big open area, and then with the tunnel entrance you'd come in, and what I decided to do was just have the board at the bottom. But down here you can see I just had some other ideas of ways that you could manage this, depending on the height of what models you want to be able to go into the tunnel, and I worked with that a few times as I went through and changed around a little bit. But in general, the point of this slide is make sure that you think about how tall you want them to be in, how deep you want your trenches, and what you want size-wise to come in and out of the doors and that sort of thing before you get started, so you know how to cut your foam as you go along, and that'll save you some mistakes. Alright, the first step is done. I actually cut extras in case I want to do a second project, but a bunch of 1/4 inch hardboard into 2 foot by 2 foot squares. I love that my table saw is now out of storage, although my current garage is very small, so it makes it difficult to use it. But that is the first step. Next thing I'll need to do is cut out the foam. Alright, so here are the rest of the raw materials. I
Picked up some 4x8 the polystyrene foam. I got the blue. I usually get the pink. The blue's a little more expensive around here anyway, but they didn't have it, so I ended up getting 2 sheets of 1 inch, a sheet of 1/2 inch, and I cut them in the parking lot so they'd fit in my car because I had my wife's car. Gonna need sand. I have a big my bucket of sand right there. I have a bunch of various paints. I'm going to use a lot of leftovers from other projects. And then today, sorry about the whipping around making everyone nauseous, but I cut those down on my table saw to make sure that they were all exactly the same size. So first step is to cut the 1/2 inch styrofoam, which is going to be my base, into the squares. I won't glue them right away. Use liquid nails for that. But let me cut those to size. Alright, so here is what I did is I lay down the styrofoam and put the boards on top of it. What you'll see is this is the piece I cut off to get in the car. So I'm going to use this smaller piece for the side where the tunnels, because I know that this piece is going to get cut out in those anyway, so it's okay for them to be a little short on one side. But the length is good, so I will go ahead and cut these out to size and then move on to the other 4 boards. Okay, I'm finishing up the last of the 1/2 inch very first layer, and for those that haven't done a lot of foam and cutting and stuff before, I use just this sort of Fat Max little blade. The thing to remember with this foam is take it in short cuts like that and then go deeper and deeper. This foam dulls these knives very quick, so the one place not to be chintzy on is in your blades. Just go ahead and replace them. I've done my 6 cutouts, and all I did was held this down, use it as a guide, and come across. I'm just about down. I'm one-handed right now, so having a hard time. The other thing I do, which is probably overkill, is that I go ahead and mark each one with the foam it goes with, and that way it probably doesn't matter on this one because I'm going to cut away so much of it, but just in case there are little differences in the sizes, or this one has warped a little bit, so just keeps things a little bit easier as we go along. Okay, again, it may seem a little obsessive, but what I do at this point is I lay out all the wooden pieces and I go ahead and mark them, even though I know that a lot of this will disappear. I'll do this with every layer. I learned on my last board that you can start getting things confused. So I just label everything with what board it's going to be marked up against. And then next step, I will lay out the blue 1/2 inch layer and mark out where the first round of cutouts are. Okay, so now the first layer is laid out and drawn, so these are the areas that will go all the way down to the board. So here's that cutout area, a cutout area. This is going to be the bottom of the tunnel coming all the way through, and at the end, this square down here, the 8x10 area, is going to be where there's going to be a bunker. Then on the other side, you have again the tunnels drawn in. Then you have what's going to be a fortification, more of the tunnel, and then back around into the big open area. So what I'll do is I will cut these out, and then I will glue them down, and that will be the first layer done. Okay, here's one last shot at the cutouts before I move on. Basically, it's a little rough on the cut there, but it doesn't matter because that's going to get textured for the ridge wall. Over here on the other side, you can see where I've cut it out to make the trenches. Remember, on the bottom, you cut it all the way through. So next step is really to just lay this out on top of the other boards and draw it out. Don't glue yet at this time. Okay, so I realized that I was out of liquid nails, so what I did is I went ahead and I laid each of the pieces of wood on the 1 inch panels and cut the panels to square. I went ahead and labeled them up so they would all be facing the same direction. What I did try to do, and I think I screwed up a couple times, but places where I know it's going to be cut out is where I put the grooves, and then I made sure that because there's like an extra 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch, I made sure that I went from the groove side and not the tongue side of the of the panels because I don't know if you can see here, I'll probably have to get some light on it. Leaving these grooves on makes it a little bit harder to make it modular, and that was a mistake I made on my last board. So cut so that you cut off the groove here, and just show you what I mean here. So this was the edge where the groove was, so I made sure this side did not get used. Just learn from my mistakes. Okay, so what I did is I laid everything out. I laid out their individual piles. I stacked them like this. And you could just glue them down and measure and start cutting, but what I decided to do instead was to stack them in their individual piles. Like I said, I label them so I know where they go on top of their hardboard bases, and then I just decided to draw out so that I can cut that way. Gluing them level by level would work, except that the only concern I had is with the trenches, you'd have to measure, and then you're going to be cutting down in when you do the second level, and you may miss and come off. This way you're at least very close, and then you can just clean up the edges. And since I want it to be modular, they need to be fairly specifically placed. So I'm going to do each one individually. The stacks, I'm going to do the just cut out where the tunnels are on all the sides and these areas first, and then I can start. I can glue down just the very first base layer because none of the trenches are involved in that, and then I'll do the trenches on the bigger ones. One thing I forgot to mention earlier was keep this piece that you cut out here, because that 1/4-inch piece is going to be the floor in there, and I'll put some little stairs in there later. The biggest thing in the ones with the trenches is, I've already done this. I cut the first one, and I'll show you over here. So the first one, I traced this out and cut it on the first one. So then what you need to do is lay your board like this. Make sure you flip it over before you cut out the second one. And we're going to do it on the back here, because remember, you're going to need about a 1/2 inch right here. So if you just keep cutting, you're going to end up with something like that all the way down, and you're not going to have the top of that back trench. So to get that 2-inch hole in the trenches, you need to do it this way and then cut down. And what you do is you set your blade. Oh, there it goes. There you go. And that is the end of a Games Workshop Manufactorum. But anyway, you'll set your blade for 1/2 inch like this to cut, and you'll get to your level, and then we'll come in this way a little bit at a time to pull it out to get to the depth that we need. So let me do these, and then on these it doesn't matter because well, these will be different as well. I'll come back to them. Okay, I'm back. So what I did is I set my blade to be the height I wanted, and then what I've done is I've cut each of them, and I've done them all so with this blade set at the same height, so I'll have a consistent height. The only one I didn't do are the ones that are going to be cave-like entrances from over there. I'll do them later. And then, as you see, I've scored it through, and yeah, I did realize it was a little dark before. But I've gone through and scored here so that when I come in on the side, I can just pull it off in piles, and or in strips. And it doesn't really matter, if the roof is a little rough. Well, it is a cave, and I haven't decided yet. I may put up like little planks and stuff inside to look like there's wood. I haven't decided yet, but so that's the next step. So the next step will be coming from the side, lengthen out the blade, and then you pull it off in these strips. The one other piece to be aware of is that this one over here, where there's going to be a little bunker, if you're going to do it exactly the same, but This one doesn't matter because it's going to be all the way through, and then I'm going to put a little 1/2-inch floor in there at the bottom. But you know, general principles are the same. And then of course you see I have the grooves here. They're not a big deal, and a lot of that will be gone anyway because of the pulling it out for the caves. So I'll come back after this next step. Okay, so here you can see it with the first couple of little layers gone. I had a much rougher job over there. I had to change up my blade. Still thinking about how I'm going to get the depth to get this piece out. And I just realized that I don't have to, because that needs to come all the way out because that's where the bunker is. So never mind. So anyway, basically, I don't know if I can do this with my hand, one-handed here, but yeah, I'm just laying it here and just coming, brace with my elbow. All right, and just coming across like that. And then once you get to the depth, it just peels right off. All right, when I'm finished with this, I'll come back. Okay, I just came through the last cut, and then that's how it comes off, just like that. Okay, so here it is after I have done the excavating. You can see this is going to be where the tunnel is going to be, and I broke the sword on an incubi in the middle of painting, so I've just been breaking things left and right today. And then you know, just for size comparison, this is how much room you'll have in there, and that's one of my daughter's Peace Marines. She wanted happy, nice Marines, so that's what she got. So that's it for this piece. Next, I will start working on the ridges over here.
That's the end of this first part of the How to Make a Trench Board tutorial. In part 2, we will continue on building the base foam and the trenches. So see you in part 2.